Hello, everybody. And on behalf of Artistic Director Loredana Comonara, welcome to the 5th edition of Italy on Screen Today, New York Film and TV Series Fest, a festival showcasing the best of Italian contemporary cinema and TV series. In today's panel, we will be talking about directing and show running in current TV shows. And I'm here with two amazing, very special guests, and I'm really happy and honored to introduce them. We have Emmy winner and multiple Emmy nominee, director and producer, Allan Arkush.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Allan.
Good to see you.
Hi, Allan.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carlo.
Allan is best known for his work Heroes, Crossing Jordan, Nashville, Melrose Place, Ally McBeal, Moonlighting, The Good Fight, Series of Unfortunate Events, The Temptations. And last but not least, Allan is also frequent commentator and guru on Trailers from Hell. What an amazing track record, Allan. I mean, we are so happy to have you here and to hear a little bit about what your incredible experience. On the other side, we have award-winning director, screenwriter, producer Carlo Carlei. Carlo is best known for The Fugitive, The Bastards of Pizzo Falcone, Generale della Rovere, and his feature films Flight of the Innocent, Fluke, Romeo and Juliet. Thank you, Allan. Thank you, Carlo, for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, yeah.
Allan, I would like to start with you. Of course, we have, I mean, this will be an incredible panel, and I have so many questions. But, I mean, you began directing episodic television in the 80s.
Yes.
In 1984 with Fame, and you directed a total of 250 episodes. Wow.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like NCIS, The Good Fight, as we said, Nashville, Brain Dead, Defiance, White Collar, Another Life. I mean, we could go on. And 14 episodes of Moonlighting, actually one of my favorite TV shows. And Ally McBeal, as you said before. So I imagine you have seen and experienced big changes in directing and producing TV shows, I mean, through the years. Yeah. What are the biggest changes and challenges you had to face?
I came out of doing indie movies. And indie movies in the 70s were not like indie movies now. The indie movies of the 70s were movies that were exploitation movies. They played at drive-ins. There were car crash pictures. There was women in prison pictures. There was rock and roll movies. And that's where I did Rock and Roll High School, where I worked for Roger Corman. So when I came into television, at the point in the 80s I came in, television was going through a change, and shows that had a distinctive style were becoming popular. So before that, there was relatively anonymous style visually and sound-wise and tone-wise. You really couldn't tell the difference between one cop show and another until Hill Street Blues came along. And Hill Street Blues, an American show, was their inspiration was a documentary about a day in the life of a cop. And that's what they took as their inspiration. And they set the camera free and did a lot of camera movement and so forth. And that fit, and very fast-paced. And I watched it and loved it. And then as soon as that started happening, the same studio, MTM, started making a medical show in that same style. They wanted Hill Street in the hospital. That's the way American television works. And because I had done Rock and Roll High School, was asked to direct episodes of the show Fame because they needed people who directed music. And I stepped into it with the mindset of a director of movies, which meant directors in charge. But in television, the showrunner's in charge. And now showrunners had a vision because the motion picture business was getting narrower and what they would make and not make because of the blockbuster, Bruce Paltrow, who ran the show, surrounded himself with playwrights, which was not the normal playwrights because he loved the theater. And Bruce's wife was an actress, Blythe Danner, and his daughter is Gwyneth Paltrow. So Bruce has a deep knowledge of theater. And so the scripts were really great. And for me personally, I was only being offered broad comedic movies because of Rock and Roll High School. But when I was offered Fame, it worked out really well because I was bringing my creativity from the kind of movies that I made into a rigid format of Fame. And they were open enough to allow me to make each episode of Fame more like a musical movie, in the sense that the music numbers moved along the storyline and that we were using contemporary songs, because also I had done MTV videos and won some awards for that. So that was that. And then my agent said to me, you should do more television. And I said, well, I couldn't really just do any show. I have to do a show I like. And she said, what show do you like? And I said, it was St. Elsewhere. And it took her 8 months to get me a job on St. Elsewhere. And Bruce Paltrow was very good at diversity. He would take people with no experience in network television, give them jobs. And that went for women from different races, everything. It was very wide open, and so was the show. And the cast included Denzel Washington and terrific people. So they accepted me for one episode, so I had to learn the style of that show. And that was new to me. Elsewhere was very much wide-angle lenses, sunlight everywhere. So you could change your direction in scenes and block it in a very open way without a relight, which meant actors could move around you. It made it the ability of people on a theatrical stage in the writing, but aware of where the camera was. So people could move, and it was handheld. And so you could adjust constantly. And we had a fabulous operator. And that was a great learning experience for me to take someone else's style and make it my own. But that's what good television is all about on every step of the way in American television. Now, Carlo creates his own show, so he creates his own style. But for the first 5 years of my career, I went from there to moonlighting. Now, because I was the new kid, right? So all of a sudden, there's someone who actually, I'd done some directing. So I went and I met at Moonlighting, and I really wanted that job because I love romantic comedies of the 30s and 40s and had studied them a lot. And that's what they did. But that show was not soft light at all. It was old-fashioned Hollywood-style hard light, because the director of photography had started in the 40s as an assistant cameraman for people like Harry Stradling and all these great old-school cameraman. And so he actually used hard light, and like in horror movies where you see them a lot, there's shadows on the walls that are done with, they call them a cucularis, and we use long lenses with a lot of backlight, and we couldn't turn every which way. We shot with 2 cameras, and it was that style. And the writing was very much in the school of the Howard Hawks, of His Girl Friday. We literally, like in His Girl Friday, had the dialogue running side by side on the page because there was so many overlaps. Mm-hmm. And most of the time when you do overlaps, everyone's afraid that it'll overlap, can't be repeated, so you don't have them really overlap. But we overlapped everything live, and it gave it a tremendous energy.
Sure.
There was an openness on the part of the studios and networks. And when they had creative people, they trusted them. And the creative people, the studio networks would cheer you on or give you notes, but they were, I used the analogy when we were talking about them being like in the bleachers, in the stands, like at a soccer game. They're a football game. They're up there cheering you on, and they may be in the owner's, but they're not on the field coaching. And that's the big change. In the last 20 years, the studios and networks are on the field coaching, and all information goes through them.
Okay.
And in those days, the people on the shows that I was doing were great creators, and nobody gave them notes.
Okay. And Carlo, you migrated to television in 2000, coming from award-winning feature films from Flight of the Innocent and Fluke. At the time, at least here in Italy, whoever was making television was considered, belonging to a different league. I mean, feature people didn't really mingle with TV series, with people who were doing TV series. They were kind of belonging to the different worlds. Things have changed dramatically over the years, also because the art house feature production has changed dramatically. But can you tell us a little bit about your experience when you did your first TV shows? I mean, Padre Pio and Ferrari.
Okay. I think that I have to tell the story in a slightly different way. So my first experience on TV was 10 years before, when I directed the first ever produced TV movie shot with high definition cameras. At that time, I mean, it was really like a pioneer's kind of job. At that time, in 1989, I was only 28, and I was hired by somebody who loved a short that I made. I was a big fan of science fiction and visual effects, all homemade. So he gave me this assignment. He said, we have to experiment these new big cameras made by Sony and Thomson, a joint venture between them. And would you do like a documentary of the Museum of Science in Milan? And they say, well, would you mind if with the same budget, I will do a short, a fictional short, displaying the power of high definition television, how beautiful it could be, etc., but just telling a story instead of just doing a documentary. And they say, okay, and would you mind if this short would be science fiction? And he say, okay, and would you mind if this short will have a lot of visual effects? And he say, well, yes, but there is a catch. You can't do anything in post-production. You have to do everything live, because they just invested all the money in the artistic. There's no equipment in post-production. So they modified that with 3 different cameras. I was doing one camera on an actor, one camera on an actor on a green screen, one camera was on whatever background I want to, the character to be. And another camera was on a tank filled with salted water, where we would drop any kind of substance and stir it, etc. And we would use like a big glass with some Vaseline, spread on top. And we would do this in front of the lens of the camera to have like a ghost effect. We did everything not with a real crew, but with a crew that was usually assigned to do like a TV news. So they knew nothing about fiction. They knew nothing about keeping a character into focus, etc. I mean, I don't know how and why, but that short it came out actually pretty well. We even showed it to Industrial Light and Magic, and they were amazed by the quality of the visual effects, but they couldn't figure out how they were done because they didn't look neither digital, neither analogic. And the actual result, the definition of the camera was so much different than anything that you've seen before and anything you're seeing now, because it was a high definition that was much closer to the chemical image of film. So, as soon as the digital technology, started, this system that was, in my opinion, remarkable, of course, was put aside, and we had to wait almost 15 years to have high definition, a digital high definition. But still today, I look back at that experience like something that allowed me to shoot, in 3 different sets with 3 cameras. And so that was my first professional job. And I never, even when I made the features, I never used one camera. I wouldn't know how to make a movie with one camera, to be honest with you, because I always use 3 cameras. I mean, and for me, it's absolutely important. And when I did a little documentary about Michael Mann, who's a director that I admire a lot, both as a great filmmaker and also as a great executive producer of great shows. Crime Story comes to mind. That, in my opinion, it's I put it in the same league of Hill Street Blues, even if it wasn't so successful. It's more like a cult series. I felt that that scene in particular in Heat, when Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are chatting at the table of Kate Mantilini, when Michael Mann expressed me the reason why he had to use 2 cameras, for 2 close-ups simultaneously. It was exactly what I never really theorized, but I always knew by instinct that you want to give the best on both, angles. I just hated the many times when I saw even great movies when there is a character that you see his back and it's like a statue. It doesn't move. It doesn't react. In my opinion, having 2 cameras shooting simultaneously 2 actors motivates both to give their best. So since then, I never abandoned this. And it's a system that fits very well when you have to shoot with multiple cameras. And especially if there is an action scene, an explosion, etc., when you have to use 6, 7 cameras, it comes very easy to you to figure out, once you explore the space in front of you, it comes very easy to understand what is where the best angles are, places for each camera. So that when, it's not just about coverage, it's about creating a dynamic between the different angles that will give you the best possible action, I mean, of course, always filter it through your sensibility. Every director is different. Anyway, so after my experience with this short called Captain Cosmos, I directed my first film, Flight of the Innocent, which was released by MGM in the US and the Disney Buena Vista for the rest of the world. And I made another feature, Fluke, which is now a cult movie, but at that time, unfortunately, because MGM was on the verge of bankruptcy, it didn't make a lot of money. And so I was in movie jail for a while, and movie jail became development hell. I was actually the guy who told the guys at Warner Bros. That they had a jewel in their library they were not aware of, which was I Am Legend. And I started to develop I Am Legend after I pitched them. That was in '96. But then, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger came in and wanted Ridley Scott. And then the budget, reached $180 million in '96. So the project was dead for a while. But that's another story. So I was, was developing all these high concept movies like Daredevil, Fox. And of course, Marvel, of all things, went bankrupt in '97, and the project was also held into, the bankruptcy court. So, the frustration of seeing all these high concept movies. I mean, probably $100 million movie that I was about to direct, that I created. I came up with the ideas. I pitched it to the studio, and I made good money in developing them. But they never materialized. And in my country, where if you have a project that everybody says, that's very good, they make you do the movie. And that wasn't the case in the States. Nobody warned me that if you have 5, 6 projects in development, that doesn't mean 1 out of 6 will go. Maybe you have to develop, 15 to get lucky. And so I was so frustrated, to be sitting in front of a computer and just writing and writing. But I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was now working for Mediaset, an Italian, a big Italian TV giant, who said, "You want to make a movie about Padre Pio?" Who was a Capuchin friar, who was spent all his life in the cell of a convent, but was probably most famous person in Italy, and he was performing miracles. At least, this is what is.
This is what the believers believe.
Fans were exactly, but it was a very interesting subject matter. And I asked for total creative freedom. The script was a little bit of a mess at the beginning. It was like poltergeist with flying objects, etc. And it was a very controversial figure because, of course, the first thing before, he was a saint for many. He was a con artist for not believers. But then I read a so-called post-mortem report by an Italian psychiatrist who wrote that this guy suffered from theological obsession, which meant that since he was a child, he was really believed that he was in direct contact with God, and he could actually spread his word and could act like a conduit, between heaven and earth. So in a certain sense, I was taken by the fact that he was delusional, but he was in good faith. And on that, walking that very thin line between reality, the necessity to be realistic, like William Friedkin was in The Exorcist. That it's one of my favorite movies, and it looks like a documentary. The way the aesthetics is much better than a documentary. The cinematography is beautiful, but what I'm saying is the approach, the direct, the visceral approach, etc. The sense of realism in that movie, it's really close to a non-fictional work of art, in my opinion. And so I approached that, and with the same point of view, in a certain sense, trying to be very objective and see what happens, see how this, contrast dialectic between religion and folklore, between this contrast, I found a style that, in my opinion, was very successful. Padre Pio became the most successful miniseries ever in history in Italy, and in proportion, one of the most seen things in the world in terms of share audience, because Italy is a $60 million people country, and we reached almost 60% of the audience. Wow. I mean, we did numbers that were matched only by the final of World Cup soccer. So it became like a phenomenon. and so that gave me a lot of creative freedom and success, and I could do whatever I wanted. And so with the same actor, we embarked into another very ambitious project, which I believe is one of the most expensive miniseries ever in Italy, and one of the most sold worldwide, because we shot it in English and simultaneously in Italian. So it's almost like a shot 2 series, which was the biography of Ferrari, the car mogul. And that was, equally successful, and the budget was very high. And the difference between those days, I mean, we're talking about exactly 20 years ago, Padre Pio, and 17 years ago, Ferrari. The difference is that those were practically movies. Movies shot in super 35 millimeters with the schedule of a movie. There were miniseries in 2 evenings, so 2 parts miniseries. Pretty much the running time was 2 hours and 2 hours. So I mean something like 340 minutes, and there's no comparison with television today. They are 2 different planets. You had all the time to set up the shots, to be creative, to do camera movements, to choreograph things in such a way that it was pretty much like shooting a movie. Today, and I'm amazed about what Allan, said before, because I even today, with the time that we have, probably 1/4 of the time and the budget that we used to have, in Italy, they still didn't develop that kind of scientific method where you can have a show running, with different directors, bringing a little bit of their own imprinting, their own print, but respecting the aesthetic of the series and the style, etc., in a kind of a seamless way. We don't have that in Italy. In Italy, usually, I just wrap. I'm about to finish post-production.
Carlo, can we go back, because I'd like to go back to Allan for a moment, and then we'll go back to your talking about your latest shows. Allan, you have really extensive experience as executive producer. I mean, right. You said you worked and you're working on both sides. So you're executive producers of Heroes, for which you also received a nomination, Crossing Jordan, Hellcats, A Client's List. I mean, in some cases, you directed several episodes of these shows.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what came first? I mean, were you hired first? I mean, did you come on board first as executive producer and then you also directed, or vice versa? And how did you manage this double role?
Well, I just want to comment first on something that Carlos said when he mentioned Michael Mann. The importance of Michael Mann in the history of American television. That was a show with a very specific style and a very specific color palette. Everyone remembers the pastels and the hot colors and the long lens style, and the same thing with Crime Story. So he put a big imprint on it. And so the transition, I just want to mention that, and that's very interesting. So when I was hired to do these television episodes, because I had come out of the Roger Corman school of working, I did my first movie in 10 days. So I was used to working fast, which I got paid, by the way, $85 for. That's everything. So it's very low budget. And so that I was able to work fast, and as I got into television, that style of Roger Corman became a little more codified because they were shooting at that speed. So I was doing all these, St. Elsewhere, all these different shows, and I was seeing that I was answering to a director who was in charge of all the other directors. And these people were very talented and had set a style. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then when I was offered my first pilot, I said, well, now I get to set a style. And that's the key to the first bunch of executive producers, director producers. You meet, this is going to sound so crazy, okay? So you get a script. I was popular, so I got a bunch of scripts for pilots, and I have to choose a pilot. So I read them, I say which one I like, and then I go and have a cup of coffee or lunch with the guy who wrote, or woman who wrote the series. And then we get married. right? We have lunch and we get married if we get along. And that's it. Your intuition, right, goes back and forth. And like, for instance, on Crossing Jordan. So I really liked the script. I liked what it said. But I was also being offered a detective show with a female detective that had a lot of style in the script. So I meet with Tim Kring, the creator of Crossing Jordan, and we're talking about the show. But there was a part of me that did not want to think about a morgue and dead people. And you're immersed for 22 episodes. That's what you have to be in that headspace thinking about it. And as we're talking, Tim is saying that he wants to do this coroner, this woman character who has anger management problems. She's a difficult person. I thought, well, that's really interesting, And then he says, the coroners they're the last people you see. They need to do justice by you to find out what caused you to get to that place. I thought, well, that again struck me as someone. He was not talking about a police procedure, we solve crimes. He was talking about that. And then I said, what should the morgue look like where they're working? And he said the thing that sold me. He said, it should not be a science fiction morgue. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, all morgues now are very clean and air conditioning and bright lights, and that's what you do. He says, I don't want that. If I could have my morgue in a church, that's what I would do. And I was taken aback by that. What a point of view. I said, what do you mean? He says, I would like it to be more of an old-fashioned morgue. So if we could come up with a way of doing that. So I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, here's the choices of the two shows. And I don't know if I want to think about morgues and dead people as much as I like it. And she said to me, grow up. I said, why? She says, you are, I think it was like 50 or something. People around you are going to start dying. And you need to grow up and become part of that and use that in what you're doing. And she was right. And it was a great move. And so what we did to get the vision, this is what a director-producer does on a pilot, is we did research about what were morgues like a century ago. And they were not in the basement. They were in the top floor of buildings, which was crazy, with big windows, because they were usually in the tallest building, so no one could see it. And by opening the windows, the smells of the breezes carried through and got rid of all the smell and everything. So we went to Boston to find a location, and we found a bunch of buildings that were our exterior. And then we found a couple places in LA to shoot in that had similar style windows. And we set it in that area. And then when it came to, we got picked up. And the key to a television series getting on the air is it has to be, and this is the making of the pilot, it has to be new and familiar at the same time. And by that, I mean, it has to have the genre tropes that carry you along. You can follow the story, but with originality of certain aspects of it. And that's how you get the originality to stick. It's like a musician like Miles, but he plays a song that everybody knows. So he takes you with him. And so Jordan gets picked up, and I said to Tim, how do you see this show? What in the pilot? Let's sit down and talk about what we want each episode to be like. And by then I had directed quite a few episodes of other people's shows. And he said, when you did this walk and talk all in one shot, I really liked that. It gave it a reality. We saw the other rooms, and then we ended up in an office, or we ended up in the autopsy room, all in one piece, and it gave it a reality to it. That's what I'd like to be able to do with the set. So I sat down with the production designer. I said, here's what we must have. We want 2 doors on every room. See, this is how you break it down into what the relationship between the showrunner writer and the showrunner director. Tim would not have thought it has to have 2 doors. I thought it has to have 2 doors because the story comes in now from 2 directions, or you're talking and you go out. And each of the autopsy rooms had 3 doors. And that's so when the people are around the autopsy table, which is a big part of that show, or in a science lab, I can bring the next character in from the background of any shot. And it makes my blocking really interesting. I can bring them in and then go out with them. And it gave the show a flow to it. Plus, all the hallways had glass windows with shades on them. So now I can change the backgrounds constantly. Full up, half shade down, right? Different lights. And we were designing it around an old building. So we took the old building thing and made it out of steel. So it looked like steel and marble, because that's what in the Boston area all the buildings were made out of. And because it's a modern day show about modern day forensic methods, all the cable and the computer stuff had to be lashed to the old building. So you had a lot of texture. And that was our key. And so I was giving all my directors a playing field to do this style in. So you could see people coming on a long lens through the glass. That's what you have to aim for. So you have to give people options of how to do a lot of page work and so forth. And it allowed us also to change the lighting throughout. It's 22 episodes, and you don't want them to seem all the same. So that was what a showrunner, a director producer does. And that was interesting to me to do that. We had certain rules. So this is an example of what rules of a series need to be. When Jordan or any of our people see the body at the crime scene, make sure you get a close-up of the body, of the face, from the point of view of Jordan, and a low angle up on them from the point of view of the body. We wanted to see the connection between them. So that drove the episode. So you see that land on the character. A side angle would be too objective. We wanted that to land. So we had that. That was a rule. The other thing was we did this game where Jordan or whoever it was would try to imagine the crime scene and what happened. And it was like a little bit magical with effects, whatever. Now we said to the directors, do whatever you want. The best thing you can do is give me something I had never thought of before. So that gave them a little juice to do something really special. And so we did every kind of flashback. Sometimes we did the thing, Carlo, where you have half the room be the present and the person crosses over and you pan with them. And now the room is the same room, but it's in the past. So we did lots of stuff like that. So that's essentially what the role of the director producer is to provide a playing field that expresses the writer's desire and also gives the other directors the maximum amount of way to shoot a scene within what you want.
Yeah. I mean, showrunners are key figures in the American TV system. I mean, for us in Italy, in Europe, there are some TV shows that now are having showrunners. But let's say for Italy, this is still the role of the director, assuming that one director is directing all episodes and has a kind of creative control over the show.
Right. And there are many American shows that do that,
Yeah. And
the orders are shorter now. This was started when the orders were 22 episodes. Now, if you have an 8-episode order, it's doable, if you have all the scripts ahead of time.
Do you think, because there are pro and cons, of course, as you said, you said before, the fact of being the executive producer, but also the director gave you immediate ideas on how to shoot. Maybe a writer wouldn't have this idea of how to shoot because you are there shooting basically, and you can provide immediate solutions. So, but I wanted to have both your opinions, both of you, Allan and Carlo. First, Allan, I wanted to ask you if the role of if the type of showrunners have changed, because now we have writers being more and more showrunners. Running their shows and maybe the shows that they're writing. And Carlo, I'd like to know if, in your opinion, being a showrunner is still or should be still the director's job. or more than the producer's job? I mean, this is a little bit provocative what I'm asking, but I'd like to.
No, because the showrunner here has to be a consummate filmmaker. That is, they may have started out as a writer because they're writing the pilot, so they're creating characters, and they have the overall arc of the show, and they hire writers to work for them. So they have to know everybody's job. They have to be a producer in the sense of someone like Hal Wall. He has a blank, and there's books of his notes to the directors. He knew everything. So they have to know all those parts of the jobs and know how to articulate what needs to be done. But the great showrunners are, when they step in the editing room to do their pass, it's not the script anymore. They accept it for the next stage. And the good ones say, look at it and go, okay, we're not getting enough traction with the story and second act. Let's take the first scene in the first act of the B story and begin the second act with it. Now we pull together all the other stories. There's less space between them. And now we're starting with a new character. And now we've tightened. They see it in a different way. And when I worked on Crossing Jordan, you get the director's cuts. You look at them, always leave enough so that when Tim came in, he could look at it and add what we call the Tim Kring touch. He would be able to do another pass because I would lead him to where it was because we thought so much alike and make that the final pass of it. And so the exciting thing is if you have a bunch of directors that you're rotating through. Well, when you think of all the people who have been nominated in the last couple of years for best episodes, think of all of them as people that come through as one of your directors. So Ernest Dickerson, who did episodes of Heroes, he shot Do the Right Thing. And he directed some of the best television. So you go, all right, I got Ernest coming in. He's going to look at what we do. And it's like, Ernest, here's the script. Do what you do. And that's really, it keeps it alive over the course of years. It gives you a bump. For me, the most exciting part of it was always the first year because you're discovering what the show is. And the actors are finding out who that character is because it's not like a movie in that sense. And directing a pilot is not like directing a movie and it's not like directing an episode. You are trying to present something that isn't the first episode for the viewer. It may be the first they see. It has to feel like it's the 8th episode, that this world is in place and you are jumping on a moving train.
Carlo, what do you think? I mean, do you think that the...
Yeah, I would agree. If Carlo's agent sent me Carlo's work, I'd look at it and I go, yeah, let's hire this guy, He's great. He's going to bring all this stuff to it. And the writers would get excited and they go, look who's directing episode number 6. It's Carlo. And they go, we have this mystery plot, I'm just guessing, that he would really kill it, And so sometimes they'd actually write towards the guest director. They knew he had strengths. And
There is only one problem, Allan. My agent is too lazy to send you anything.
Oh,
just kidding. Anyway, the thing is this. We're talking about the apples and oranges here.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I didn't have the chance to tell you how much I admire your work. And I mean, I love pretty much everything you've done. But to think that the guy, for me, Heroes was really like something so groundbreaking.
Yeah.
There are 6 or 7 shows about superheroes right now on television, without counting the DC universe, that I was really amazed about how real those characters were, and if you make characters that really look and sound real, that you can really relate to with their problems today, with their everyday life problems.
You are absolutely right, Carlo. When we drifted away from that, the show
You
failed.
believe any kind of superpower it has. Yeah.
Yeah.
You believe any superpower it has. Now, the thing about television in Europe, and there are some exceptions, because I think with some series, some production companies are graduating to what is, let's call it an American method. Like Gomorrah, they had 3-4 directors rotating after one of them gave a precise style to the show. But the problem in Italy is this. The project stays in development 3-4 years, goes finally in production for whatever reason. They give you 3 months of pre-production and 3 months to fix the script and to adapt the script to the locations, etc. These 3 months are never 3 months, because then they shrink to probably 8 weeks, 7 weeks. So you really don't have the time to do anything. Just pick the locations and try to do your best. But bear in mind, there is a showrunner, but it's the director himself. I have no executive producer with a creative role, that advises me, or I can look at for advice. The writers went on to do another job because they are not paid enough. So you cannot rely on anybody. As a director, you have to be also, the executive producer. You have to be the key creative person, making decisions about the script at last hour changes. Do you think there is anybody that you can call? Yes, maybe you call one of the 4 writers listed, and they will probably, because their mind is on something else right now. Yeah, they'll probably give you a couple of ideas, they may work or not. Anyway, you have to do, I never in my life shot anything for television, and I think I've done probably 10 things now. And when I say 10 things, I mean 12 episodes, 8 episodes, all written and directed by myself. No rotation of directors. So it was all my shoulders. I've never done anything that didn't require me waking up at 6:30 in the morning and working for an hour and a half before going to the set, fixing all the problems that in rereading it, I'm finding because of the location, because of a logical contradiction with. So it's a complete different, what is a teamwork in the States is practically a one-man show here, and the one-man show is the director's show. The responsibility I rather share with somebody else and focus only on what my job is, which is making the best possible as a director. So that's why it's so frustrating sometimes, because people don't understand the importance. It's not that they don't understand. Money is shrinking for productions, and where do they cut? They cut pre-production, they cut post-production, where the editing, has to be quicker and quicker and quicker. They cut on visual effects. That's why you still can't really graduate to a level of quality which is near, to what you see in American shows, with the exception of stuff done by good directors who, through their sacrifice and a very high medical bill, manage to do something that breaks
brother. I'm with you there.
Between Italy and Switzerland, and that's all that we have.
It's Simona, as an example of what both of us are talking about, a show that's a huge huge show right now is the chess show, Queen's Gambit. And a show which is a more of different directors that's also great is The Crown.
Yeah.
And they're both really high quality television. And when I watch The Crown and there's this woman director, when her name comes up, I go, okay, she brings this, I start to notice their style, and a show like Homeland, the directors on Homeland and the woman who runs Homeland, to me, she's one of the best directors in the world, and her work consistently and her track record and the way that she gets that show to be, to look good and so forth, the logistical situations that they get themselves into, shooting in the Middle East, and then they got to make it look like suburban Washington, D.C., and all that, it's like beyond me. And I really liked what you said, Carlo, about the 3 cameras. I've done that a couple of times. On Nashville, they shot with 3 cameras, and they built the set so you could do that. A lot of practical lights. And I usually shoot with 2 cameras in the same direction. But when I get to a situation where it's going to be a very emotional scene with 2 people, and I don't want to do it over and over again, I will warn the director of photography, and he will design a lighting setup. Maybe there's a white tablecloth or something to bounce lights in that fills both people, and then shoot them at the same time. And Carlo is right. There's a huge benefit for being right in the moment, and getting those reactions.
Yeah. Allan, you mentioned before pilots. I mean, you have directed 16 pilots, 10 of which have gone to series. Well, first of all, congratulations. But and you already said that directing a pilot is not exactly like directing the first episode of a TV show or any other episode. Well, I'd like to explore a little bit more about that. And also I'd like to ask you, has pilot season changed with the arrival of the platforms?
Yeah, pilot season doesn't really exist anymore.
Okay.
Because the networks were all on the same schedule. And so you'd get the pilots would be sent out in early January to get directors to do them, and the writers would meet with you, just like I said. Now it's all the time. Now there's no breakdown. So it was insane. You'd get the pilot script in January, cast the whole thing, then you start editing it, and then you give it to the studio, who would watch it once or twice and say yes or no. And the editing time of the pilot was always insanely short. So all the same people are competing for the same actors. Right? It's a limited acting pool. It's people who are not stars of other TV shows, but should be, and finding a leading man for a pilot is really hard, and finding a leading woman that can carry a show. What's changed a lot is this. Right now, say I'm facing the monitor, I'm directing this pilot, okay? It used to be right there was the showrunner, right? Script supervisor, line producer goes in and out, right? That's it. And maybe a studio exec would come and visit. Years later, they have to set up another row of chairs for all the executives until finally I say, put them at this monitor. I'm going somewhere else. I can't listen to all of them. I can feel them like or not like something. I don't need this, So I get really close to the actors on a little monitor like this so they can't bug me. And then they come back and get all these notes. The showrunner and myself and I would say the best pilots that I did and the writer were in constant communication. And if I'm watching something, they would lean in and say, we talked about this having more irony. It might help just a little bit, Simona, in giving you, because I teach this at the AFI, a little bit of the structure of an episode and how it works. There's a structural pattern. First day, you have what's called a concept meeting, and you go through the script with the department heads, and you talk about how you're going to do each of these scenes. Or is this a location? Is this not a location? What kind of special effects and so forth. As soon as that meeting is over, depending upon the show, you attack what is going to be the biggest variable. If it's a music show, like I've done, you right away have a music meeting. That means everyone not involved with the music and the choreography and the production. That means all the other departments. You sit down, you talk about the music and what kind of songs, and you play songs. On Heroes, it was the effects. So camera, everyone's sitting down, we're talking about how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. Should that be digital? Should that be physical? Then the producer has to start thinking like, what could go wrong? That's all they're focused on. So they say to the effects people, day after tomorrow, let's have another effects meeting. And you say to the director, start thinking of how you want to shoot this, because I want you to start getting shot drawings. So you keep having meetings in the areas that have the most difficulty. So in the course of an 8-day prep, which is all we had on Heroes, you might have 3 or 4 effects meetings every day, seeing how it's going, or dance meetings and so forth. So every department has its meetings. You go right away and scout your locations. And then at the end, you have what's called a tone meeting. And I tell my students how important this is. So it would be the writer and the showrunner, if they're different, the director, the editor would sit and go over every part of the script and what's the subtext and what should be happening here. That way, when the editor gets the dailies, they know what takes should be the ones. That way also that you are in sync with the writer on the set. So, and the line producer. So when things get heavy, and you're trying to do 7 pages a day. I mean, Carlo, imagine how many decisions, and the writer has the right then to say, to be your coach, to sort of see if you missed anything. And if you had a good relationship, it makes the show better. So that's like the ultimate kind of teamwork thing that's involved with shows that have a lot of episodes. Now with less episodes, the pilot season is who can I get that's right for this show, especially once they started hiring feature directors to do pilots.
Yeah. It's very interesting, Allan, what you're saying about setting the tone. Yeah, Carlo, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask you, is that a bad thing about feature directors directing pilots? Or is
No, it's fascinating.
A bad thing?
It's fascinating, Carl, because there's some of them do fantastic jobs, and there's a thing about a character on television. A character on television, in television series, is someone who's in your home, and that's very different than going to a movie and seeing Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. In a television series, you want the character to be very complex and to also reveal more of themselves each week. So the actor you cast has to think of themselves in a long arc, and the writer has to discover more and more about the character, which means adding backstory and stuff from week to week. So, it's a different sort of thing. Carlo, what was it? Did you just ask me?
No, if you think that
the feature director, right. So the feature director doesn't think that way. They think about it as an entity, as a movie, and so they will tend to cast people that are not necessarily like the character, and for a series, you want someone who is like the character, because at 7 a.m. on Monday, they got to be that character, and they have to be that person with ease on Friday at 2 in the morning after they've memorized 35 pages that week. And so they fall back on that. And so you want them to stretch, but it's a different kind of stretch. And what's great about the feature directors is they bring a visual panache and a style and a real directorial intensity. But they don't necessarily deliver what the networks want. And what the networks want and need because of the system is close-ups, and the character has to jump. To get on the air, they test these things. To get on the air, they need the characters to test well. And so when you think of every good TV series, the main characters just pop. Right? They bring something to it. And that isn't necessarily the way a feature director would see it. Right? Jonathan Demme, who's as good a director as I've ever met in my life, first TV pilot was too much like a Jonathan Demme feature. It was too quirky and was too, but by the end of the movie, you got it. Once he figured that out, he started doing fantastic because he condensed it. A TV pilot has to be condensed. And the great thing now is the networks, the cable networks, are making their pilot for an hour show as long as it needs to be. It's between an hour and an hour and a half. Get in everything we need. And when it was the old system, you're cutting out these bits of backstory, these little filigree moments that make it, And that's why there are so many procedural shows, because it's just the facts,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Although I like Spiral, that's that French cop show, which I really like. And that's an example of a show that looks like it was shot in 7 days. There's no lighting, but it's great. It's thoroughly engaging.
Yeah, Carlo, going back to what Allan was saying before, the importance of setting the tone of a show.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what makes a difference. I mean, the subtext of the show. It's not only what you see on the screen or what the actor is saying, but is what behind that is probably fascinating. You did it, Carlo. You did it in your previous TV show, The Bastards of Pizzo Falcone, in the first season, and you're doing that again. The importance of setting the tone of a show in your new TV show, the one that you just where you're currently in post production. Can you tell us a little bit about this last TV show?
With The Bastards was easier because the tone was already in the novels that we base our screenplay, our teleplays, upon. In this new one, it's a show that was reconceived in 4 months. I mean, it was originally was like a bank espionage story, but I think it was very boring because everybody knows that the big bank bosses are not good people, or at least they're perceived that way. Of course, there are exceptions. And so I changed the story. I changed the concept of the story. And consequently, the teleplay was completely different. I just kept the main character and the fact that she's wrongly accused of the death of her husband, and she has to flee, and that's why it's called The Woman on the Run or The Fugitive. I think we're gonna change the title, of course, because there is a new fugitive with the son of Donald Sutherland. I forgot Kiefer Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes. So what I say is that the tone is on the page. There are no meetings, nothing where you discuss the tone afterwards. After the scripts have been delivered and approved by the studio or the TV network, you are on your own, and you have to try your best to keep to respect and keep the tone that is on the page.
So Carlo's the author of the series.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, what may change sometimes. I mean, like the case in the case of this last show. No. In the case of this last show,
you were the showrunner. You were everything. Yeah.
Yes. I was saying that
when I've done miniseries, it's like.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
when I've done a miniseries, so I've done the whole thing, and it's multiple episodes like The Temptations. That was it as well. There was a writer, but I told the writer what I wanted, and I was in charge of all of it because I had to get it on the air in time. So in a way, Carlo is the auteur, and it's much more like a European movie, or in the sense the classic Hollywood movies where the director puts a stamp that's it's theirs, unmistakable stamp.
There is one thing that you can do though, which I did in this last show, which is the tone was, very suspenseful, very, very dramatic and fast-paced. They're all the qualities of a good thriller, but I felt it was a little bit too monochromatic, so to speak, a little bit too serious. So the thing that you can do as a director to modify the tone is also casting somebody who's like an actor, who's more like a comedian in a role that is not really serious, but it gives you that little bit of comic relief that you need here and there. So somehow, even if you keep and respect, what the genre, the genre rules dictate, you just slightly light up a little bit, the tension and enrich the series with another layer, which in my opinion makes it more interesting because the life is like this. It's multi-layered. You have drama, you have death, and then you may laugh at the funeral of somebody because there is something, all of a sudden funny happening, and it's just a bad example. But what I'm saying is, yes, you can always tweak the dialogue, etc. But the tone, 90% stays the same. You can just do little adjustments, and I think casting against type is the thing that you can do to improve things. Yeah.
If I can draw another analogy, I use this analogy a lot, and it's a musical analogy. In Los Angeles in the 60s into the 70s, they recorded a lot of the great pop music that we've come to know. And there was a set of musicians that were in these 2 or 3 studios, and they were called the Wrecking Crew. They were basically worked on all this kind of music together. So in the morning, the Wrecking Crew might be working with the Beach Boys. Right? And so now they're playing Beach Boys music under the strict style that Brian Wilson wanted. In the afternoon, they might be doing a Phil Spector song like Be My Baby. And at night, they did the theme for Mission Impossible. Same musicians. And their technical skills are such that they can do that. And every once in a while, I've noticed this, they will do something that will stay in our minds forever because they are such good musicians. They will give it something special. And do you know the song, bum, 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 be my baby, my wife?
Yes.
Anyway, the guy who plays the drum, Hal Blaine, you will remember for the rest of your life that drum intro. So it's Hal Blaine bringing something that wasn't there into it. And so at my best, I aim to be Hal Blaine.
Okay.
I aim to be Carol Kay, who plays the bass line, in California Girls or whatever, to be that person who, part of a team, does the thing that makes it memorable.
Right. Simona, I want to go back to something that Allan said about feature directors versus expert TV directors who are specialized in pilots. I think I want to offer my point of view because there are 2 series, mini-series that I really love the first season of True Detective by Kerry Fukunaga, and of course The Night Off, which actually was directed by both Steve Zaillian and Richard Price. Okay,
as good as it gets.
I think that my sensibility, drives me more towards that kind of television, because there are some friends of mine, I remember Felix Alcala was very popular in the, late 90s, and, who are specialized in pilots. But if you have, and they have an incredible, impeccable track record, like 80% of what they direct gets picked up. But, the risk is that, yes, they can adapt to different style, etc. But the risk is that you have 10 shows that all feel that they have the same print on them. So on one side, that's what the network want, because they want close-ups, etc. And God forbid, you want the show to be picked up. There's nobody saying the opposite. But what I'm saying is that what you sacrifice is the originality. We were talking about Crime Story. And I remember Crime Story being, Michael Mann being great, because he used Eugene Core. He used independent directors from the independent film world, American independent. He didn't use, only, TV experts. He used he used somehow authors or artists, whatever you want to call them, and I thought the results were amazing, and that's why somehow I think that maybe there should be a little bit of a compromise. Otherwise, the risk is that you have 10 shows and they only look the same.
I couldn't agree with you more. And we're right now, luckily, in a period of time where the Directors Guild and the producers and everything are pushing for diversity of talent and bringing new voices in. And the two series that you named are two of my favorites, and the director was able to do all the episodes. And that's a really great thing. What has happened in television, and that makes it hard for me now, is they've kept changing the format. It used to be 4 acts. Now it's 6 acts. How in an hour can you take 6 act breaks? It makes every little thing short. You have 6 minutes of action, and it has to build to something that makes you come back. So you've lost all the integrity of telling a regular story. It becomes all about event. And the shows that Carlo is talking about, those are all, you can run them the whole amount of time. And that's a huge impact, a big impact. The Sopranos, none of that. I used to love at the end of The Sopranos when the show ended and the song credits rolled, because you start thinking about what you had seen.
Yeah.
And I just can't watch these shows and all these commercials every 5 minutes. I've done them. I just can't direct it anymore.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you have to structure everything a certain way, and they kind of, I think that they've hurt the loyalty of the viewer. That by taking the easy money of more commercials, all these network shows' ratings have gone down, 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 because they are working with an outmoded formula. And Carlo and what he's saying and the variations on that are really where television should be going.
Allan, you directed for Netflix a series of unfortunate events, and you received a nomination for the DGA Award. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? I mean, directing for a platform.
That would have been more like if I was working for Carlo. If Carlo had a big show and he says, I can't do this episode, Allan, come and do it. And we sat down and Carlo told me what his taste was. I want this. In this case, it was a feature director, Barry Sonnenfeld, who has done very stylized stuff as a cameraman and as a feature director, whose look is not dissimilar to Wes Anderson, as an example. And so the show was in motion. I had a meeting, and I watched it, and he asked me what I thought of it and how I thought it was shot. So I said, it looks to me like you use a 21 millimeter lens and nothing longer than 27 millimeters. And the eye lines are very close to the camera and the tone, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, great. He says, how do you see your contribution to it? I see this as a cross between Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, the Marx Brothers in Duck Soup, and The Shining. And he goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he turns to the producer I'd worked with. He goes, Rose? And Rose says, listen to Allan, he's right. And so I was able to take Barry's style, which is like so specific, and learn how to paint in that style. But the resources, the sets were unbelievable. Each episode was $7 million. And all the sets had set extensions on it. And, working with it, you could dream it all up. But in order to accomplish this, we had a 2-year-old on the set, 2.5-year-old. Are you ready for this? No double. Carlo already is growing pale. I can see the reaction on his face. No double, Carlo. And that means you have 15 minutes with this child, who is the lead character.
Ooh.
Right? If you've seen the show, the child is the lead. And so we had to plan every single shot in prep because the main characters have heavy makeup and they don't want to have them waiting in the heavy makeup in the course of a whole season. So everything's figured out. And this is not technical, but this is what it's like directing a 2.5-year-old who's tremendously talented. They're 2.5. Okay. So they come on. So you block the scene with the cameraman. We lay out what it's going to look like, which directions and what shots, using the style that Barry wants, which means no panning, straight this way, certain kinds of compositions. We planned all that. Then we bring in on the day the lighting crew and the actor and the stand-ins to start it. When it's time now to bring in the older child actors who are 15 and 16, we do rehearsals with them and a doll. Okay. Right? So they know what to do. Now everyone gets ready to bring the baby in, right? So in comes the baby, who looks around at all this and says, not today. Front line, not today. No play today. No play today. And so then the woman who played her sister in the show picks them up and they play hide and seek because it's a new set. And they play 5 minutes of hide and seek while we all stand there, right? And then she segues them from hide and seek to what's going to happen in the scene, because this child knows I stand on the yellow mark and I look towards the other yellow mark, right? And we do that a little bit for 5 minutes, and now the cameras are all ready and everything, and I've got 5 minutes left and we go action. And the first take, usually pretty good. This child believed what was happening in the scene and reacts in the moment. And so you always plan the scene so that the child comes in, they do something, and they put the child down. And the child, the second take, I would be standing there with the executive producer, and I say, did you just see what I see? Was that like perfect? And they go, yeah, keep shooting. You just keep doing it until you run out of time. The child is done. And you shoot everyone else's coverage. And here's the weird part. You take the doll and you put the doll on all the marks that the child was on. You take your iPhone and you take a picture at the angle you want. And the next day, the second unit comes in and in 15-minute increments shoots all the coverage of the child. It's crazy. But the artistic challenge of what the script is like and the ability to do that kind of broad comedy and when I said about the Marx Brothers, I meant it. What I love in the Marx Brothers movies is they're set in some country. They're set in America that I don't recognize. I recognize, but it's also Marx Brothers land. And that's what that show was.
Okay. That sounds fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the episode of Hostel Hot. We did whole homages to The Shining because it's in a haunted hospital, and you don't want to go to this hospital.
Okay, better not these days in particular. I mean, the great thing about TV shows is that they create affiliation. I mean, there are people, audiences that reach out and then create fans communities. Do fans reach out to you? Do people reach out to you through social media?
Heroes. Well, Crossing Jordan, they started a special website, and they write in about each episode. And they wanted Woody to get together with Jordan, and they comment about the relationships, etc. But when we got to Heroes, it was insane. We had to have full-time people responding the next day. And you know how when you do a commentary on a movie you've made, we did it for every episode because they wanted it next day after they'd watched the episode. They wanted to hear the director and one of the actors talk about what went on behind the scenes, because we sold millions of DVDs, and they would do all the behind the scenes stuff. And it was a fascinating show. I mean, I've never directed in Japanese before. And two of the characters were Japanese, and they would talk in Japanese. I remember the first time we sell them. This is how insane a network is. All right, so they see the pilot, which they love. You've seen the show. You know how original it is.
Absolutely.
They get the bill of what it's going to cost, right? And they say, "This is too expensive," and we go, "Well, this is what you bought." And they said, "Well, does everybody have to have a superpower? Because that's expensive." And we go, "Yeah, that's the concept." And then they say, "Do they have to live all around the world?" And we go, "Yeah, that's the idea, that all these people with superpowers come together. Couldn't they all live around each other? What, and have a clubhouse?" So there was that battle. And then they watched the dailies the first day, and they go, "Are they going to talk Japanese the whole year?" Yeah, that's the idea. And so we tried an episode where they spoke less Japanese, and it was not funny. We went back and reshot it. Every time we tried to save money on that show, we went back and reshot it bigger.
Yeah, because this is the concept of the show, that they live all around the world. They're not living in LA altogether.
And you gave it that was a show where we turned the directors completely loose. If a director came in and said, "What's the look?" I said, "If you think it's too wide, make it wider. If you think it's too tight, make it tighter." Just set yourself loose. So in a situation, Carlos, where we were doing overs and close-ups, which is kind of standard coverage, we would also make sure there was another angle, which was the best possible way to see a room and moving. And that's against the rules of moving quickly in television, because that shot stands on its own. You can't combine that with another shot. So now, instead of doing 7 pages a day, you're doing 4 because of the time it takes to do that shot. Not to mention, people are being ratcheted out of rooms and stuff, and you're just doing effects and this and that, one right after another. But, it was thrilling. And I did this episode called Company Man, which was my favorite episode, and it was supposed to be a bottle show. This is an American invention called the bottle show. You have spent all your money. Okay. It's like episode 9, and they realize at the network and the studio that you're way over budget and you spent all your money, and you better solve this. All right. So you say, "Okay, we'll do a bottle show." What that means is you don't leave the set. So you don't pay for Teamsters. You don't pay for any of this. You do everything in the set. You come up with an idea like they're trapped in an elevator, or something. And that's why it's called a bottle show. It's like building a ship in a bottle. And that saves you a lot of money. So we were supposed to do this bottle show, but the guy who was writing it is one of the most creative writers I've ever met in my life. He did Hannibal, the series. He's done so many great series. Brian Fuller, genius. And we're reading the bottle show, and in the third act, TV show, a movie called Desperate Hours, which traps someone in a house. So that's a good concept. Two people with superpowers trap the cheerleader and her family in the house, and the whole thing plays out in the house, except in the next to last act, the house catches fire and it's blown up with superpowers. And so we say, Brian, it's a bottle show. You can't blow up the bottle. And he says, why not? We're not going to go back to that set. And so we have to build 2 more sets. One, the original set, we have to make it all fireproof because you don't really burn it. Then one that showed what it was like after burning. So what was supposed to be an 8-day show turns into 17 days. And it's the highest rated show we ever did. So much for the bottle.
I remember that. It was really a masterpiece. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Carlo, I mean, you started shooting your TV show at the beginning of this year, and then you had to stop it because of the first lockdown, and you resumed in summer. I mean, you have experienced the challenge of this very special year. I mean, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges that the TV business is going? I'm talking about scripted shows that we're going to face next year, in the coming years, particularly here in Italy.
Well, first of all, I hope the vaccine, bring a solution to the problem, and this nightmare will be over soon. That said, I think I was very lucky. I mean, I was much more scared about the lockdown. Can you imagine waking up at 7 a.m, going to the set and shooting, and your adrenaline be so high, and all of a sudden the next day, you go to the set and they say the crew doesn't want to work anymore because they say that no matter what kind of safety measures you're taking, everybody is stopping working in Italy, so they don't see the reason why they should keep working. Of course, I would have, steal the cameras and do everything myself, but it was impossible. So I found myself the next day home, waking up, taking a shower, dressing up, and going down, waiting for the driver. And then I realized, oh no, we stopped. So, I mean, it was 5 months of the first month. It's funny because somebody else 1 hour ago asked me what happened, during the lockdown. What happened to you? What did you do? Were you able to write something? And for me, the first month was like adjusting to this apocalyptical scenario and being very depressed, not being able to do anything, walking around like a zombie, packing a lot of food, thinking that it was the end of the world, And then it took a month. And then the second month I started writing, and I never stopped, and I wrote 2 or 3 concepts for series and a feature, and that saved me. The writing saved me, and what can I say? I mean, when I was called back saying, okay, let's do like two weeks of pre-production and we'll start again in early July, it was like I just left the set the week before. And what really changed was just that we were wearing masks on the set and trying not to be, I shoot with 3 cameras. I mean, I mean, I started to shoot with 2 cameras and with 3 cameras only in extraordinary cases, you know, that really needed 3 cameras. Because I don't like to use the stage. We shot in real locations, and so sometimes we were shooting in a room where, you know, there wasn't enough space for, you know, 3 cameras plus the operators, the assistants, and the, you know, video control, and etc. So we were lucky because we went through the summer. We wrapped on October 5th, just 1 week before the second wave of COVID-19 hit Italy again. So I felt blessed, you know, because I was able to go back to work to finish my series, which I think is one of the best things I've ever done, because it's very challenging. It's a completely new genre, very, very new for Italian mainstream television. It's pretty much, you know, it's different than in the States, because in the States you don't have exactly an order of importance of the networks, or, you know, the
Right.
cables. I mean, here Rai 1 is like, you know, it's like what Disney is today. You know, it's like he encompasses everything. The you know, the majority of the audience is there. That's where the big numbers are. That's where you can make you know, 8 or 9 million, you know, people with the series, which I've done with the Busters, and I want to do again. So there are some rules. I mean, you really have to grab the audience by the balls, so to speak. It's an audience that it's not very young, but it's across the 4 quadrants. So, but, you know, the hard rock of that audience is people, you know, from 50 to 70. You have to please them, but then you have to attract also younger audience. So you have to play with melodrama, and you know, have like the DNA, the melodrama DNA is inherent to the success of a series for Rai 1. And if you want to try something else, like I've done, because this is like an action thriller, it's an action thriller about a woman whose husband is killed. She's accused of his murder, and they take away her son. The bad guy actually kidnapped the son. She has to find the son, and while she's escaping from the police.
We're not going to do spoilers on that, right?
No. But I was just saying that it's like making a French souffle. If you want to, how do you say, to mount, to inflate and be a good souffle, all these ingredients have to be played in a way that you have a very good mix with you know, in proportion. And in doing that, you're really doing you're not only doing a work of fiction, you're doing you're engineering somehow a TV series that can win or fail on the basis of the proportion and of those ingredients.
That sounds interesting. I mean, the souffle recipe, I mean, is getting interested seeing the time that we are approaching. But I mean,
Carlo, do you like to cook?
I love to cook. Yes.
Me too. I think good directors like to cook. You know, yeah, because you know the flavors that go together. You know the harmonies. You know.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think I don't know what you think. We're slowly wrapping up, right? I mean, so we could continue for another hour again, but
maybe we will continue to talk over a cup of coffee when all this nightmare will be over. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know, Alan, do you live in LA?
Yes, and I stopped directing after the Netflix show because I got a job teaching at the American Film Institute. So now I have 120 film students from all over the world, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm passing on my knowledge. Yeah, passing on my knowledge.
I wish we could be there. I mean, I wish we were students with you. I mean, I can imagine. You know, I'm a big fan. I'm also watching your your presentations on trailers from Hell.
Yeah.
So fantastic. I mean,
thank you.
So enriching and interesting. So I'd like to maybe to finish with one last question. I mean, any new projects, anything that you're developing or you want to write, direct, executive produce, Alan, and then we move to Carlo?
I have a project, a dream project that may happen. When in the 1970s, I worked for Roger Corman and made Rock and Roll High School and all these car chase movies, and everyone who worked for him, well, Roger Corman is the key person for all talent afterwards, so many people. And we were film students. We were all the same age. And for a period of 5 years, we worked 7 days a week making these crazy movies and cutting trailers and so forth. And at the same time, Roger was distributing movies by Fellini. So I got to work on Amarcord, on the trailer for Amarcord, and Cries and Whispers, and Kurosawa's Dersuzawa. So we had this bubble that we lived in of crazy film nuts, and we always wanted to do a TV series about this. And John Sayles is writing it, and Joe Dante and myself are going to direct it, and we're going to ask the other directors who are around, like Ron Howard and everybody, to come direct episodes. So we're trying to get that off the ground, and maybe we have interest, and it's just going to be a crazy self-aware comedy, about this, very loose, and every episode will end, because we cut trailers, with a trailer for next week's episode. I'm hoping that happens, and meanwhile, I have a new semester coming up, and I do little special lectures to my students about topics that interest me and them. It's fun. I really enjoy it.
I love it.
I have to watch that Ferrari one.
Yeah. You should
I'll make sure you get a copy.
And what about you, Carlo?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I was a guest at AFI, and I really love the environment there. I could see the passion of all these students coming from all over the world, and I believe I screened Flight of the Innocent for them, and it was a blast. So it was a great evening for me. Everybody has a dream project. I mean, I do have a dream project. My dream project is a feature that I want to make. But, while I was finessing this dream project, then I came up with another idea, which I think is even better. So maybe now I have two dream projects. And I have like 3 or 4 series that are early stage of development. I hope one goes with Netflix and another one with Rai. When I'm done with the production of The Fugitive, I can't wait to get to be behind camera again in a time matter, because that's where my life is, I said, and I really wish I'd be back on the set very soon.
Okay, and I wish both of you to start directing very soon, and maybe you can do one project together. Who knows?
Oh, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. I want to see him wielding his 3-camera thing.
You will add an extra camera for the happiness of the producers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was really.
That would be a dream.
That would be a dream, yes.
That would be a dream for me.
Yeah.
So thank you, Simona.
Thank you so much. Really incredible.
And
it was amazing.
Well, I'm going to say goodbye.
Yeah, we have. Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Do you want to say goodbye, Carlo? Otherwise, we were going to.
Okay. Hear you.
Yeah, your connection is not very good at the moment. Okay.
I got a family event. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Have a lovely Sunday. Have a lovely evening, Carlo, and hope to see you very soon. And thank you again, both of you.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.